We all have emotional and physical needs that drives our behavior and social interactions. The need to be loved, accepted, desired, understood, and supported are a few of many examples. One of the primary reasons for starting relationships is having someone who can fulfill some of those needs. The type of relationships we choose to be in dictates the type of needs that we are expecting our partners to fulfill, as well as whether or not the fulfillment of those needs is going to be exclusive to them and them only. In the last episode, we learned about Ryan and Maria's mindset before starting their relationship with one another, as well as how the relationship started and the way it progressed. We also witnessed the many missed opportunities for assessing compatibility and learning to resolve conflict successfully. In this episode, we're going to see how the combination of the ongoing struggle to communicate and resolve conflict successfully and facing a major life stressor like grief can lead to infidelity. Let's take a look. You heard the question of why didn't you speak up?
Why didn't I speak up?
Because remember, there's a difference between saying that, I'm not going to speak up about this because the other person have a valid point, therefore really there's no bone to pick, right? But I'm talking about the times where you felt like, okay, well, I do have an opinion about something, a strong opinion about something, I should speak up about it, but I won't.
Because it's easier to avoid the fight.
Okay. Go ahead.
It shouldn't be a fight.
I've learned her quirks and her habits. If something doesn't quite go the way that she has it in her head, if it's not her way and this is the way it should work, this is the way that she sees it works, this is the way it's gonna have to work, she's so extremely headstrong on it that it's easier to just go, okay, here you go. I don't want, if this is the way it's going to work, this is the way it's going to work, and I just sidestep.
Okay. So I'll tell you what I heard you say, and you correct me if I misheard it. So along the lines of what? I don't speak up because I have enough experience with her where I know if I attempt to speak up, she's not going to be convinced. If she has an idea in her mind, if she has a point of view, she stick to it, rain or shine, and nobody's going to be able to change her mind about it. Therefore, It's easier to say, I'm going to go with it because even if I speak up, what chance do I have for me to get my point across?
Pretty much. If we're building something, if I'm trying to build something outside and I have a theory in my head and I know, like, okay, this is kind of sort of how it's supposed to work.
Okay.
And I try to explain it to her, and I cannot, for the life of me, explain how she comes across when it happens. But it frustrates her to no end because she sees it in her head how simple it is. But there's no sense in trying to fight her over it because guess what? She's going to get frustrated, she's going to get mad, and she's going to walk away. Well, I don't want her to walk away because I kind of need her help doing this project. So it's easier to just shut up and deal with it, and instead of her losing her temper over something that's, I guess, she made feel minuscule. Okay, well then that's what we're gonna do.
Your response to it?
I don't disregard you the way that you chronically think I do. I don't not hear you because I know what it feels like to not be heard, and I don't do that to people. I've heard a lot recently that you've got to always be right, it's got to be your way, you're inflexible. No, I'm not. I give too much. I care too much. And you, of all people, should know that.
What are you feeling right now?
Sucks. Hurts.
What hurts?
That's how he feels about it, that I just don't care. That it's my way or no way, and that's not how it is at all.
Why do you think he experienced you this way at times?
I am headstrong. I admit it. I am. I am OCD to a point about projects because I'm the planner, I'm the doer, I'm the details. If I don't plan something A to Z and I try to let somebody else handle it, it doesn't work right. Chronically, it doesn't work right. I don't want to be in control all the time. I don't want to be in control nearly as much as I am. But him and I had a conversation about why I'm a control freak. Because when I'm not, shit doesn't work right. I don't want to be in control as much as I am. I want to have a partner. I want to have the balance of responsibility. I want to have the break of not having to be in control and think about everything constantly. I want away from that anxiety of having to figure out every little detail.
Sure. And not to carry that burden alone.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Is he wrong about his observation of you during these times? Or is his observation are accurate, but the interpretation of those observations is wrong?
It's accurate. Because yes, I am headstrong about stuff.
Then what's the next major event in the relationship?
That was probably then Dustin. That would be the next big thing. Do you agree or not?
He was somewhere in the middle.
I've always been exceptionally. I try to be completely open with him.
Okay.
Of, hey, this is what's going on, you know. A good friend of mine got divorced. And going through that with him, I found an emotional attachment link with him. He understands me in a very deep manner. And I got too attached to him. There was never any indiscretion with him, but I got way too attached to him. And I kissed him once, and I shared a bed with him. We didn't sleep together, but I shared a bed with him because it was that or sleep on the couch.
Okay. And who is this friend?
Dustin.
Dustin. Okay.
And again, I brought it to Ryan, and I'm like, hey, this is you know, I love him. I do love him. I loved him before that. But I brought it to Ryan, and well, and we worked through it, but the resolution to that was Dustin had to go away.
Okay.
And he did for a while. But he's a member of my family group, so like we worked through it, and Ryan and Dustin are friends again, and
Okay.
him and I are friends again, and
So let me kind of pause on that event and get more information, right? Because that's a significant event between the two of you, even though the two of you have attempted to resolve it. But I want to see kind of more both sides of it and how it was perceived. So at this point of time, how long the two of you been together when Dustin shows up in your life?
Been married for 4 years.
Okay.
we've been together for 5.
Okay. So about 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how long have you known Dustin prior to that point?
I met him in 2007, 2008. It was before
Okay.
Ryan and I were together.
Okay.
I didn't know him that well.
Okay.
And for a long time, him and one of my friends were together. That was who he got divorced from.
Okay.
Was one of my good friends.
Okay. So he was the boyfriend of one of your good female friends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he was off limits, but I mean, we all have a really close bond anyway. We all talk about. At that point, we talked about everything. We were all very, very close to each other, and
Were you interacting with Dustin?
not a whole lot in college. Not
Okay.
a whole lot when him and I were first together. It was only after we moved to Colorado for the 8 months or so that we lived there.
Okay.
And
Then you began to interact with Dustin directly, or with Dustin and your friend who is Dustin's girlfriend?
there was always the interaction between all of us. Again, we were all really close family group.
Okay.
She'd started flying home a lot more too. Going home. Because you were homesick, and it was easy to send her home for a week here, a week there.
I never got to go for a week,
Oh,
ever.
sorry. Some days here, some days there. How about that? Easier?
Why did that need to be corrected?
Because I don't take time. I don't get... The closest thing that him and I have ever taken to an actual vacation was our honeymoon when we went to Vegas.
Okay.
We don't... I take long weekends here and there. I do what I can here and there. The only time that I've ever had anything close to a week was when my grandma died.
Okay.
Or no, when she was in a hospital, and you were with me. And I spent the week down there. But it was like Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like that. Because Dad called me and said Grandma's in the hospital.
Yeah, but we'd sent you down there prior to that too, for a little bit of time here and there.
But I've never had a whole uninterrupted week without you with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So you know, you interact with Dustin, right? You know, because he's part of the friend group, but also he was the boyfriend of your friend,
Mhm.
right? Then what happened?
Well, they got married against his will. And we just kind of talked off and on, and then once those two split up, he
Talk-
took it really hard.
So to talk off and on as a friend,
Yeah,
platonic.
yeah.
Okay.
And when they split up, he took it really hard.
Okay.
And me and another one of our friends pretty much kept him alive for a little while because he took it really hard, and he's the kind that put his head down, buried himself in work.
Okay.
He worked 32 hours straight, slept for 6 hours, got up and worked 40 hours straight as a truck driver
Okay.
because it was easier to work than to think.
So he took the separation pretty hard. You and another friend were there for him to help him during that difficult time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it kind of ended up going both ways. This is recent retrospection.
Okay.
I didn't realize the emotional needs that I had
Okay.
that weren't being met because I'm the one in control of everything. You know, me taking care of everything for him included taking care of myself, but I didn't realize that I wasn't being refilled
Okay.
emotionally. And that's kind of where Dustin came into it, it was kind of mutual emotional support between the two of us.
Okay. What was he fulfilling for you?
That's a good question.
Because the way you describe it, you were here's another person that you're taking care of, right? You're helping him during this difficult time. You're being supportive.
I could talk to him, and he understands me differently than Ryan does.
Okay. Can you elaborate?
I don't really know how to describe it. Struggling on that one.
I can't help you with it. I see the look in your eyes of, hey, help me, and I can't help you with it.
I guess spiritually to a certain extent, he's the same spiritual belief. Ryan couldn't be there for me when Grandma died. He couldn't be there for her funeral. He couldn't take care of me in that sense. No, that was when you couldn't. It wasn't that you didn't want to be there because you did. You couldn't at that point. Josh couldn't let you come down.
Yeah, but I did get in the pickup.
When she was in the hospital, yes, you
Yeah.
did. But for her funeral, you couldn't be there.
Go ahead, continue, please.
And so that was the night that I spent, or the nights that I spent in bed with him were the day before my grandma's funeral and the day of my grandma's funeral, and he was able to be there for me for that. And I don't really know how to quantify the connection and what he was feeling for me at that point. I guess the best way I can describe it is understanding. I don't have to explain why I feel the way that I feel about something. Like he understands, and it's not a conflict or an opportunity for conflict. And that's something that is really hard between Ryan and I will try to tell him something and he takes it personal. He thinks that I'm talking about him when it could be, past relationship, it could be childhood, it could be whatever. He doesn't understand that it's not a fault of his necessarily.
Okay.
And with Dustin, I can talk to him and he listens to me and he'll help me draw it out and figure out what the problem really is. And not judge me for it. Not make me feel... Not only is it exposing for me to try and talk to somebody about something, but when it's constantly misconstrued or misunderstood, I just don't want to keep going with it. And that was something that he was filling for me, was actually listening to me. And yes, I was taking care of him, and yes, that's where the connection seems to start for me, is I find a lame duck or whatever you want to call him, and like, no, actually, you're pretty fucking special. You're cool. You know, you're amazing just the way you are. And he turned it back around on me and was like, no, look, you know, pay attention to yourself, okay? You know, and that mental and emotional connection is really what drives my want for a physical connection.
Okay. That's the core or root of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But again, all along the lines of what he provided was somebody that you're able to, well, one, not only that he gets what's within you internally without you having to say it, right? That's one, and I'll give you an opportunity to correct.
Yes.
And two is that when you're able to talk to him about these things, there is a sense of freedom of, I can say all of these things and you won't get stuck on your personal reaction to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Any part of this you want to correct for me?
It's not incorrect
Okay.
of him understanding me without me having to say something.
Okay.
It's just the understanding all the way around. Like, I can bring something to him and he's just that quiet, listening. Okay, but why? Okay, but why? Why? And then, you know, get to the bottom of it and actually help me draw something out and figure out what the problem really is, or what it really is. And yes, there's a lot of intuitive understanding between the two of us.
Okay.
And
So
a depth of connection between the two of us.
Okay. So there is that added layer of somebody who can actually help you sort out through all these complicated thoughts and feelings that you have.
Yes.
But also without inserting or asserting his assumption about it.
Right.
Okay. Your reaction to what she shared?
No, I can understand it. We don't talk emotionally. We've never really talked about emotions and been that way with each other. We had a little bit, but then we just kind of went away.
Dustin paid attention to me for me. Not for all the things that I was doing. Not for the caretaking, not for... I was... not an equal partner, because there wasn't anything, like, he's very traditional. He wouldn't have done anything anyway. He wouldn't have crossed any lines. But it was the attraction was natural for me, because he had the emotional connection with me, because he gave me that. He gave me the attention. I've always been... I was raised by a cowboy. Don't cry, don't feel anything, don't show your emotions. And through the divorce and all of the volatility there, I learned the best way to handle an emotional situation was to just deadpan. Doesn't matter what's going on inside, don't show your emotions. Just sit there and take it, essentially. Whatever it was, you just sit there and take it. And he could kind of see through that. And that's something that I have done with Ryan, because it's safer to not admit to not being okay or whatever, because I'm the one that takes care of everything. I'm the one that's strong, strong, passionate, involved. Like, you're the doer, you're the planner, and whenever I would get to the point of having to break down or not feeling listened to or heard or understood. So, again, this is a recent find. This isn't at the time.
Yeah.
I was disregarded a lot. My boundaries. I don't like this. Well, we've always done that. Or, I don't like this because, or, hey, that's a problem for me because. I would get pushback on it. Oh yeah, you're right, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry I brought it up, it's fine. Where Dustin would kind of validate that. And no, you're right, like, that's okay. It's okay to not be the strong adult, capable woman. Like, it's okay to not be strong all the time.
Some say our deaths start the moment we are born, thus making the sequence of events between the first and the last breath that we draw is this funny thing that we call life. Grief is an inescapable event that we will encounter at some point. Even though mourning a loss of a loved one is a subjective and internal process, it is also a journey that we don't expect to be alone in. How couples face and deal with tragedy can determine the strength of their bond and their ability to rely on one another during times of need. And how is it handled?
Not very well.
Okay.
I was extremely hurt
Okay.
by both of them. For somebody that I considered was a close friend to me, and he did that, and then for her saying that, hey, this happened, it's like, no, just no. And it was one of those things. And at the time, her and I were bickering back and forth too now, because I remember she was constantly on the phone with him. It was a constant texting him all the time on the phone at that time too. She was always talking to him. It wasn't that I was lacking for attention because I knew what he had going on.
Okay.
Huh?
You know why? You want to know why? You were just as horrible about grandma as I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put it on you. So I put it on somebody that wasn't involved. That was my why. I wanted that safe spot to be with you, but I didn't feel like I could put it on you. Showing my weakness to you, because when I show weakness for you, it freaks you out, it scares you. I have to be strong for you. I always have.
Your response?
It's not that I've never asked you to be my strong spot.
But when I'm not, shit hits the fan. And you can't argue with me.
Yeah, you're right.
When I crack. Oh God, what's wrong? The world is ending!
Because I've never had to deal with it.
But when I need that safe spot to crack, and you panic, it just makes the panic worse for me. So I just don't put it on you.
Yeah.
Were you aware about that part of her not wanting to burden you with her feelings, her vulnerability about?
Yeah, that's a surprise for me on that one. I didn't know it. Because had I known it, yeah, I'd probably be mad right now. Because there's no sense in hiding that from me, because I wanted to be there for her. I wanted to be there for her in the worst way. I couldn't. I would just...
I'm not talking physically. I'm not talking the funeral. I'm talking the whole emotional.
I know to handle the emotional at the funeral and to handle the emotional afterwards.
No, big picture.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I want to be there for you. Thing is how do I go about it when you and I haven't ever accomplished a way of talking about it, talking through it, and getting our understanding. There's always been somebody else you've turned to.
Well, we're trying.
And maybe that's from me in my past that I don't understand it. Because I won't.
But here's the part that I again want to highlight. You understand from her perspective at that moment of time, dealing with the loss, she felt that she's not allowed to crack or show vulnerability, or that if she shows vulnerability, it's going to overwhelm you, and that's why she decided to not burden you with this. But also on the flip side of this, it sounded like that loss impacted the two of you somewhat equally, right? Because you were close to her as well too. And I don't know how much of you have allowed yourself to process that loss, and how much have you shared with her about your feeling about the loss too.
The day of the funeral, it flat tore me up. I couldn't be there. And I knew that she was going to go there by herself. Or I at the time thought she was going there by herself. And it more tore me up the fact that she was gone to deal with that by herself. And I wasn't there. I mean, I made the journey throughout this whole thing with her. And part of the journey that I should have been there with her, I couldn't be there with her. And and then knowing now that I couldn't support her because she didn't trust me to take care of her. That just is another thing that, hey, just adds the sting a little bit of it that, well, couldn't be there physically. Was there emotionally, but couldn't be there emotionally. Wanted to be there emotionally, but wasn't allowed. Wasn't. I don't know.
How about this? Because from your vantage point, in retrospect, if we time travel back there, however you wanted me to be there for you in that time, I would have liked to have a chance to be there for you, whether or not he was going to be able to handle it or not. Different story, because that's your vantage point, right? When I try to rely on him in this, it causes anxiety, and I didn't want to burden him with that. To me, the issue here is what if that was actually a contributing factor. We have a name to it. It remains to be seen whether or not that this is something that can actually be fixed and addressed. Because again, telling the story paints a picture of this is what was my mindset at the time, and this was a reading factor why I relied on this person versus relying on you. Because again, the way you describe it is that I would have rather been able to do that with you, not with somebody else, but I didn't because X, Y, and Z.
I didn't feel like you could handle it. Because you were so powerful about it yourself.
And whether that thought about him not being able to handle it is accurate or misperception remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would say it could go either way. It could be, well, maybe he actually would have been able to handle it if he was given the opportunity, or maybe you're right that he wouldn't have been able to because of these historic events that the two of you had experienced together.
Well, she already knew at that time I don't do funerals. I don't. When my dad passed away, it was like jerking teeth out of my head to even get me to go anywhere towards the casket. You have no idea. I couldn't. The last time I saw my dad was when he was on the so I saw my dad on the hospital bed. That's the last time I saw the man. They couldn't get me to go to the casket. She told me now if I was going to go to the casket. And I flat reviews from now on. I would much rather, no offense, I don't hope you to die, don't take it this way. I would rather remember you right now or right here than to walk up and see you laying in a freaking box. Just new. So yeah, I couldn't, but I would. I'd be there. I've been there. Could have been there, yeah. The heartbeat.
Josh would need to know.
Say that again?
Josh, his boss. Wouldn't let him come.
But here's the part that I wanted you to pay attention to. Because you sharing this part says what? Is that her assumption is about my ability to handle this or not. It's not outlandish, it's not out of nowhere. She has some experiences with me, right?
Yeah.
Where she could say, well, he would probably be overwhelmed by this. And what you're saying is what? Yeah, it probably would have been really hard for me to do that, but I would be willing to do it because you needed me at that time. Do you see what got missed in that whole interaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, so they say the road tells people with good intention. So I can wrap my mind around, I'm trying to be a good partner, I understand your relationship with death and losses, the last thing I want to do overburden you with this, but there was a legitimate need for you in that moment of time. I would argue also for him too, because he was dealing with his own loss. as pertained to the death. But that decision kind of was made for him in a sense. I want to shelter you from this because I don't think you can handle it. It was going to be difficult for him, but that should not be a reason for you to give up on something that's legitimate for you. You know what I mean? Right? Because even if he was able to, if we go time travel back to that time and have a conversation, I need this from you, can you do it, can you not? Even if he's not able to do it in the same exact way that you expect, at least we can find a happy medium of, I want to get this need met with you, what can you do? Because this is important for me and I don't want to outsource it to somebody else.
Right. I guess I kind of feel a little bit targeted by that. That by trying to take care of him, I did the wrong thing.
Elaborate.
It meant that there was justification for it. But in my experience with him, and not just funerals, but emotional attachments, is I was being neglected by taking care of everything and not expecting that care in return. And that was kind of where Dustin came into it. No, hey, you're valid just the way that you are. You're okay just the way that you are, you know. I don't want you to be any other way but the way that you are. And then, you know, the trauma was when Grandma passed away, and that was when I really turned to Dustin, because I knew that Ryan was torn up by it too. And it wasn't about the funeral, it wasn't about that you weren't able to be there. I understood why you weren't able to be there. And I know that it tore you up to not be there because you actually wanted to be there for that one. But I guess how that comes across is, well, you did the wrong thing. Because I didn't let him have that emotional vulnerability for me, but by then I had already learned time and time again that he didn't have the capacity for understanding, because when I would show that weakness, and even now chronically when I show that weakness, it's exceptionally uncomfortable for him when I'm not rainbows and sunshine and everything's fine.
Sure. So let me address that. I really believe any decision that we make at that moment of time, whether it's good or bad in retrospect, it seems like the right decision to make at that moment of time, considering the input that we have. Right? But the purpose of introspection or retrospection is really to look at all these circumstances that led to that decision. So context is important, because context is what here is that you're saying I have a history where I came to the conclusion based on our interaction, or I cannot rely on him on this.
Right.
Right? That is the context. Therefore, when an opportunity came up, I put all this data in my head and I thought this was the right decision to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not negating that. I'm not saying that's not important. But I will say this to folks, is that even if infidelity happened because of a relationship deficit, is because my partner is unable, unwilling, or a combination of both to give me what I need from them. At the end of the day, I have option, right? I can really say, you know what, this is really important for me, and if I cannot get that from you, then we can no longer make this work. Or let's, drag you to counseling so that we can figure out those issues and give you the tools that need met for me, right? Versus acting on that deficit by outsourcing the need. Do you see the difference? So that's the part. So in terms of the accountability piece is of, yeah, we cannot deny that there was a relationship deficit, right? And you just painted the whole picture of, this wasn't just one day you decided that you want to outsource this need. There's a history prior to it. As how you acted on that relationship deficit. That's the accountability piece that I'm highlighting versus, well, you're
Right.
wrong, you're bad, he's wrong, he's bad. It takes two to have a dysfunctional relationship. When we listen to the negative patterns of communication between Ryan and Maria, we can see why it was difficult for them to express their needs, assess their capacity for meeting those needs, and agree on the best outlet for needs fulfillment. More importantly, a major byproduct of the poor communication was an imbalance of roles and responsibilities that at times made it difficult to even recognize the needs that were not being met for both partners. Facing the loss of Maria's grandmother was a traumatic event for her and Ryan. During this difficult time, we can see that both needed emotional support. But instead of dealing with grief together, they dealt with it separately. Ryan internalized his grief, and Maria got her emotional support from Dustin, who she was already blurring the boundaries with. The explanation of this divergence in dealing with grief stems from Maria's doubt about Ryan's ability to fulfill her emotional needs based on what she knows about his past relationship with death and grieving through the loss of his dad. The irony here is that despite Ryan's awareness of his discomfort with grief, he desperately wanted to have a chance to be there for Maria during this difficult time. On the flip side, Maria wanted to spare him the discomfort by putting the burden of her grief on someone else who can handle it better and not be overwhelmed by it. Hence, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. One thing that I want you to continually to assess is the type of needs that Maria has and the specific qualities needed in a partner to fulfill those needs. Until then, be well, be safe, and embrace the possibility for a brighter future.